The wedding hall manager crosses his arms and points toward the exit. Listen, lady, you clearly don't belong here, so please leave before I call real security. 58-year-old Sarah Martinez adjusts her simple black dress and quietly steps back as guests in expensive suits stare and whisper. What nobody notices is the small navy anchor pin barely visible on her collar, representing 22 years of distinguished service, including 3 combat deployments. What happens when a real Navy general walks through those doors will leave you speechless. Hit subscribe and tell us about a female veteran you know who deserves recognition. Their sacrifices matter too. Sarah had been looking forward to her niece's wedding for months. It was the first family celebration she had attended since retiring from the Navy 2 years ago. She saved up for weeks to buy a decent dress and drove 4 hours to get there. But when she walked into the elegant ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, she immediately felt out of place. Everyone else wore designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Her simple black dress from a discount store suddenly felt obvious among all the luxury. The wedding manager, David Chun, noticed her right away. He prided himself on maintaining the hotel's reputation for hosting only the most exclusive events. This woman clearly didn't fit his standards. "Excuse me," David approached Sarah with a fake smile. "Can I help you find something? Maybe you're looking for the community center down the street? They have events that might be more suitable." Sarah looked confused. "I'm here for the Martinez-Williams wedding. I'm Maria's aunt, Sarah Martinez." David looked her up and down with obvious doubt. "Really? Because I know the guest list and everyone on it can afford to dress appropriately for an event like this." Other guests were starting to notice the conversation. Some stopped talking to watch. A few pulled out their phones. Sarah's face burned with embarrassment, but she kept her voice calm. "I received an invitation. My niece Maria specifically asked me to come." David laughed loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but this is a high-end venue. We can't have people wandering in off the street pretending to be guests." A woman in a sparkling dress joined the conversation. "Is there a problem here?" She looked at Sarah with the same dismissive expression. "Just someone who got lost," David replied. "I'm handling it." But Sarah wasn't backing down. She pulled out her phone and showed David the invitation. "See, Maria Martinez invited me. I'm her father's sister." David barely glanced at the phone. Anyone can fake a text message these days. The real question is, how did you even get past the front desk? More guests were gathering now. Someone was definitely recording. Sarah could hear whispered comments about her clothes, her car in the parking lot, her general appearance. "This is getting ridiculous," David announced to the growing crowd. "Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily." A man in an expensive tuxedo stepped forward. "Maybe we should call the police." She could be planning something. Sarah's hand started shaking, but not from fear. From anger. She had faced enemy fire in the Persian Gulf. She had commanded a crew of 40 sailors through dangerous missions. She wasn't going to let these people make her feel small. "I served this country for 22 years, she said firmly. "I have every right to be at my niece's wedding." David rolled his eyes. "Oh great, now we have the military card. Look lady, I don't care if you say you were in the Girl Scouts. You don't belong here." The crowd laughed. Someone called out, "Stolen valor much?" Another voice said, "Probably never even left the country." Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out her military ID card. "Real enough for you?" she asked, holding it up. David snatched it from her hand and pretended to examine it. "These things are easy to fake too. Besides, even if you were in the military, that doesn't give you the right to crash exclusive events." That's when a young man pushed through the crowd. "Aunt Sarah?" he called out. "Is that you?" Sarah turned to see her nephew Miguel, the groom's cousin. "Miguel, thank God. Can you please tell these people I'm supposed to be here?" But David wasn't finished. "Even if she is related to someone," he said loudly, "this is still a private event with standards. We can't have guests who clearly can't afford to be here, making everyone else uncomfortable." Miguel's face went red with anger. "How dare you talk to my aunt like that? She's a Navy veteran who served multiple combat tours." David shrugged. "So she says, but look at her. Does she look like someone who belongs at a wedding that costs more than most people make in a year?" The crowd was getting bigger. The bride and groom were still taking pictures outside, unaware of the drama happening inside. Other family members were starting to notice the commotion. Sarah looked around at all the faces staring at her. Some looked curious, others judgmental. A few seemed embarrassed by the situation. But most just looked entertained, like this was better than the reception entertainment they had planned. "You want to know about my service?" Sarah said, her voice getting stronger. "Fine, I'll tell you." She stood straighter, and for the first time, people could see hints of the military bearing she had carried for over 2 decades. "I joined the Navy when I was 18 years old. Spent 4 years as an enlisted sailor, then got my commission and became an officer. Served on destroyers, aircraft carriers, and shore commands all over the world." David was still smirking, but some people in the crowd were starting to listen more carefully. In 2003, I was the operations officer on the USS Winston Churchill during Operation Iraqi Freedom. We provided naval gunfire support for Marines advancing on Baghdad. For 6 months, we were under constant threat of attack. A man in the crowd who looked like he might have military experience stepped closer. "What was your rank when you retired, ma'am?" he asked respectfully. "Commander," Sarah replied. 22 years of active duty. 3 combat deployments. Received the Bronze Star Medal for actions during a rescue mission in the Arabian Sea. The crowd went quiet. Even David stopped smirking. Sarah continued, her voice steady and strong. "In 2008, our ship responded to a distress call from a civilian cargo vessel that had been attacked by pirates. The crew was trapped in the engine room with the ship taking on water." She looked directly at David. "I led the boarding party that rescued those sailors. We had to fight off armed pirates while coordinating with a helicopter to evacuate wounded civilians. That's what earned me the Bronze Star." Miguel was beaming with pride. He had never heard his aunt talk about her service in detail before. But Sarah wasn't done. "After that deployment, I was assigned to the Pentagon, where I worked on naval strategy and policy. Then I commanded my own unit at Naval Station Norfolk. 300 sailors under my command, responsible for maintaining and deploying some of the Navy's most advanced equipment." A woman in the crowd asked quietly, "Why didn't you mention all this when you first arrived?" Sarah looked at her with sad eyes. "Because I shouldn't have to prove my worth to attend my own niece's wedding. Because my service record doesn't determine whether I deserve basic human respect. Because the clothes I wear don't define who I am as a person." She turned back to David. "I retired 2 years ago after giving more than 2 decades of my life to protecting this country. I live on a military pension because I chose service over a high-paying civilian career. I saved for months to buy this dress and drive here because family matters to me." The ballroom had gone completely silent. People were putting their phones away, suddenly ashamed of recording someone's humiliation. That's when the main entrance doors opened with a loud creak. Everyone turned to see who was arriving late to the reception. A man in a crisp navy dress uniform walked in, his chest covered with ribbons and medals. His shoulder boards showed the 4 stars of a full admiral. The admiral scanned the room, taking in the unusual scene of guests crowded around someone near the entrance. His eyes found Sarah in the center of the group. "Commander Martinez?" he called out, his voice carrying across the silent room. Sarah's eyes widened in shock. "Admiral Harrison?" "She's Memmered." The admiral walked directly to Sarah, ignoring everyone else in the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as this imposing figure approached. "Commander, what's going on here?" Admiral Harrison asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. David's face had gone completely white. He suddenly realized he had been harassing someone who apparently knew one of the highest-ranking officers in the U.S. Navy. "Admiral," Sarah said, still stunned, "what are you doing here?" "My daughter is marrying into the Williams family," he replied. "When I heard there was some kind of disturbance involving a Navy veteran, I had to see what was happening." He looked around at the silent crowd, his expression stern. "Would someone care to explain why one of my finest former officers is being treated with disrespect at what should be a celebration?" Nobody spoke. David looked like he wanted to disappear. Admiral Harrison turned back to Sarah. "Commander, I had the privilege of reviewing your service record when you were up for promotion to captain. Your leadership during the Arabian Sea rescue was textbook. You saved 17 lives that day. The crowd was hanging on every word. This was clearly not someone pretending to be a veteran. Sarah, the Admiral continued, you were one of the most dedicated officers I ever had the honor of serving with. Your commitment to your sailors and your country was exceptional. Any organization would be lucky to have someone with your integrity and experience." He looked pointedly at David, which makes me wonder why anyone would think it appropriate to question your right to be anywhere you choose to be. David was shaking now. "Sir, I didn't know. I made a mistake. The Admiral's voice became ice cold. "You made the mistake of judging someone by their appearance instead of their character. You made the mistake of disrespecting a veteran who gave over 2 decades of service to her country. Most importantly, you made the mistake of embarrassing yourself and this establishment in front of a room full of witnesses." Miguel stepped forward. "Admiral, sir, this is my Aunt Sarah. She's here for my cousin's wedding, and this man has been treating her terribly all evening." The Admiral nodded to Miguel, then addressed the entire crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet Commander Sarah Martinez, United States Navy, retired. She is a combat veteran, a Bronze Star recipient, and one of the finest naval officers I've ever known." He placed a respectful hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Commander, it would be my honor if you would join my family's table for dinner. My wife and daughter would love to meet you." Sarah smiled for the first time all evening. "Thank you, Admiral. I'd like that very much." As the crowd began to disperse, still buzzing about what they had just witnessed, David approached Sarah with his head down. "May single quotes am," he said quietly, "I owe you a sincere apology. My behavior was unacceptable. Please, let me comp your entire family's bill tonight. It's the least I can do." Sarah looked at this young man who had caused her so much embarrassment. "You know what you can do?" she said calmly. "You can remember that you never know someone's story just by looking at them. The next time you see someone who doesn't fit your expectations, maybe give them the benefit of the doubt." She paused, then added, "And maybe remember that the freedoms you enjoy, including the freedom to run an exclusive business like this, were protected by people like me who didn't care about expensive clothes or fancy cars. We cared about service." David nodded, tears in his eyes. "Yes, ma'am. I'll never forget this lesson." As Sarah walked toward the Admiral's table, arm in arm with Miguel, the other guests watched with newfound respect. The woman who had been judged for her simple dress and modest car was now being escorted by one of the Navy's most senior officers. The video of the confrontation, and especially the Admiral's arrival, went viral within hours. But more importantly, it started conversations about how we treat veterans, especially women veterans whose service often goes unrecognized. Sarah's story became a reminder that heroism doesn't always wear expensive clothes. Sometimes it wears a simple black dress and carries memories of sacrifice that most of us will never fully understand. And sometimes, just sometimes, the truth has a way of revealing itself at exactly the right moment.